What's up, y'all? I hope you are well. We're here for our weekend reflection message. So from the Radiant Sun Oracle, we have Mercury in Aquarius, which is originality, followed by Saturn in Leo, which is generosity, followed by the Sun in Aries, which is assertion. Underneath originality, we have Wheel of Fortune. Underneath generosity, we have the Lovers. Underneath assertion, we have Knight of Swords reverse. All right, so I'm going to let you guys listen to the audio really fast, and then we'll come right back and continue. We are shifting into a new era where originality, innovation, humanitarianism, and unity are coming to the forefront of our collective conscious and values. New light and wisdom are being revealed, and there is a second coming of Christ into the world being birthed through the salvation of our hearts. We've been conditioned to look for Christ to come from the outside, to change our inside, waiting for a chariot to come charging through the clouds to save our souls and take us away from the mess that we've made. In reality, Christ works diligently and quietly within our inner temple, transforming our hearts and redeeming our souls until the temple is fully restored, rebuilt from the inside out. This is how we are saved. As our consciousness is lifted out of darkness, as we have a change of heart, as we begin to see the world as Christ sees it, our understanding changes, our thoughts change, our words change, our actions are changed. Our world begins to change. Our cup then runneth over into our neighbor's cup, and we are all brought out of Egypt together and into the promised land. In order to embody this change, we must embrace devotion. We must slow down, restrict our impetuous nature, and reexamine our swift judgments. The greater we embrace the opportunities to change, to grow, to heal, to share, the closer we will draw to the Creator, the sweeter the seeds we sow, and the greater reality we will know. All right, so with Mercury in Aquarius, this originality card, I can't help but think about how recently this year has been all about shifting the collective consciousness off of being predominantly preoccupied with the self-interests and more greater occupied with the value of our collective interests and the humanitarian interests, right? So there's also been this renaissance in sudden expansion and innovation and original invention and, like I said, innovation and originality. Aquarian energy is also like the revolutionary, the rebel. They aren't afraid to like march to the beat of their own drum, but they see things in a really unique way than other people do. And so they're usually the ones that are the futuristic thinkers. They have foresight and vision, and they see they're ahead of their time, right? And so we're moving out of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius. And so even the nodes of the moon have shifted, where the south node is in Pisces and the north node is in Virgo, also ruled by Mercury here. And what that means, again, is another example of how the South Node moves us away from something that we're already finished with, it's already complete, So Pisces is the sign that is the completion of the soul's journey through the zodiac. It's the maturation of the vessel, the desire to give, the desire to share. It's the deepest thinker. It's the deepest, embodiment of the philosophies. And so it's like the Pisces, just wants to share and to be in the depths of the self and to self-explore and to, do the healing and have that realization and that full revelation of self, that self is then just like, oh, I'm complete with self. I then now want, there's nothing left for me to do but give and give and give. Right. And so the ultimate point at which we are complete with our life is when we have no desire to receive anymore, and we only have a desire to share. So it's like we need somewhat of a desire to receive on behalf of continuing to give and to share also. But like the extreme situation of a Pisces is like they're that old energy, right? Where it's just like, oh, I'm so tired. Like, oh, I don't have ambition for myself maybe. But they kind of like, so point being, before I go off onto like a longer tangent about that, is that we are kind of finished with that, with one level of excavation of the inner work, so that we can now embody what we have worked on and learned in order to use that to serve humanitarian efforts and to serve the betterment of mankind and to bring all the goodness into overflow to help others with, right? Use what we've learned and how we've healed in order to share with others, and to be proactive during these times where for some people it's just starting to fall apart. We can be, already been grounded and gotten our footing for these times that are kind of uncertain. So I feel like the more we are ready to be light and adaptable and ready to change and transform and embody metamorphosis, I think that the wheels of fortune are going to be turning in our favor. I also think that the more acts of receiving for the sake of sharing, acts of humanitarianism, acts of sharing are going to be rewarded with the sweetening of the way that the wheel is turning in our favor. I think that, Jupiter has been coming up, and it's going to be coming up through this next year, but there's lots of aspects going on with that right now and incoming, and it's like whatever we give Jupiter can expand. And so when we are generous, spiritually generous with others, when we are generous with the Creator, right? Because everything that we've been given it's not really ours. It's just resources that the Creator has given us in our stewardship to manage on the Creator's behalf. And so if we're not properly sharing a portion of what we receive, then we're abusing the Creator's gifts, right? We're taking from the Creator, or we're stiffing the Creator, right? So the more we can stretch ourselves to push beyond what we think we can do as far as like giving energy and sharing and showing up for others, right? And then that can look like different things in different ways too. It's, sometimes it's about giving our time. Sometimes it's about listening with patience. Sometimes it's about giving our money to help others, or old, clothing or possessions that can be reused, right? Or donated. Sometimes it's about material giving, and sometimes it's about spiritual giving, and sometimes it's about giving time, right? And giving energy and doing things that maybe like you're not quite like wanting to do, where you have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. It doesn't actually come easily or naturally to you. Sometimes those are the things that can reveal the greatest miracles, right? So the more I think that we push ourselves to overcome our own selfish nature, or the desire to receive for the self alone, or the desire to receive instant gratification in lieu of long-term value, then the more we can overcome that lower nature, the greater destiny we will align with and reveal. back to the Jupiter energy. So Saturn in Leo kind of like gives Jupiter energy. This card depicts like sort of a disciple here, or an apostle, giving the teachings of this sage or this patriarch, or this prophet here. They are giving like divine inspiration through this apostle in order to like spread their message, spread the good news, spread the gospel, spread this philosophy, spread the spiritual wealth to others, right? And so right now, and then this is with the Lovers card. So the Lovers card is about choosing our paths in life and making our choices, and making our choices from the heart, right? And letting our higher, like our connection with Holy Spirit guide us. Let our soul guide us, let our heart of hearts guide our way, and not just do what we feel obligated to do or guilted into doing, or, what people expect of us to do, or what, we think is the polished and, acceptable, like societally, whatever thing, the thing that'll help you fit in, the societally approved method, like whatever it is, like what we really need to base our choices on, and what we're going to co-create this next chapter of our life, and this new timeline and this new life on is what is our soul crying out? What was our ennui and dissatisfaction all about all this time? It was because we weren't aligned with where the soul had been calling us to begin with. And we had betrayed that, and we hadn't listened to it, and we did what other people wanted us to do, or thought we should do, or expected us to do, right? But now given a second chance, it's like we want to really connect in and make those choices from a soul-guided place, and to make those decisions from the heart. And so I think too, as we go through life, it's like we want to decide, in that space, when we're making our choices, to be spiritually generous, to be generous of spirit, generous of heart, kind to others, like spreading the good news. With this Mercury in Aquarius, it might actually hint at something that is destined and fated to happen, that's going to could change the course of your life, that has to do with some way that you have some story or some solution or something to channel or to communicate to others, right? To give this information forward, right? Or to proclaim good news, or maybe there's something in you, like a book or a blog, or vlogs, or a series that you wanted to make, or a documentary that you feel called to make, or some way that you feel that you feel led to like use your perspective and your voice to speak up, or to use your talents for the sake of sharing, for the sake of being a greater vessel of the light in this world, and use that platform for the sake of how you can give, and how you can give back, and give goodness, and nurture others as well. So I think tying into making those decisions to be generous to others, I think the more we can really, every choice that we make this year that is seeded from the consciousness of not just receiving for the self alone, not just taking instant gratification, but connecting. Is this in alignment with the Creator's plan? Does the Creator want this for me? Is this in my highest good? Can this be something that can spread light to not only myself, but generate it to other people, right? Are other people affected by this decision? Can I make this decision even better and wiser so that it has a better, greater effect on more people? Can I take others into consideration here that I might not have? Right? Like making our choices from a very conscious place, from a place of wanting to consider the greater good, right? And consider others when we're making this choice or this option, right? And so we're learning how to do that as consumers. 2025 was all about unboxing the evil big boxes, and the boycotts and the undoing, and then reconsidering how we want to direct out the power of our dollars, right? and what businesses we want to support, and when we can mindfully do that in a night, like in a, you know, a heartfelt way, right? Like, I'm always a person that does this anyway, but when I buy gifts for people, I always go to a local gift store and get something unique. I've never just been that person that just drops in to a Target or something, or a Walmart or a big box store to grab somebody's personal gift, unless it's for a kid and they just want a toy or an electronic or something like that. But usually even for them, I try to do something like unique and memorable. But yeah, so those are options too. I've saved myself 2 or 3 times from ordering something off of Amazon recently, from just like checking out, like doing a local Google search and finding out that Elders Ace Hardware down the street has like everything that you want, and they don't have an overabundance of options. They just narrow it down to like 3 practical choices in 3 different price tiers, and it's amazing. And they have everything you need, but not overwhelmed with like too many options. And that's why most people don't go to that store, because they think, oh, I need to go to big Home Depot or whatever, because they won't have what I want. That's the opposite, right? And so it's just like more condensed, more in a cuter package. But I am such like a fan of Ace Hardware. Y'all check it out, especially if it has like someone's last name attached to it, like their franchise. I don't know. That's the one down the street. It's they even have like a cute little gift store in there. I mean, it's like outdoors, home, audio, like almost all the basic like requirements you need to be a hardy, you know, sturdy person. Okay. Back to the reading. So we're making generous decisions and high value choices, and we're including others in those choices. Now, so we have the sun in Aries, which is assertion. So I am an Aries personally, and I know that I can be bold and blunt and impulsive, and in many ways that's good because it's got a lot of get started energy and self-starter energy. But sometimes that impulsiveness can be too blunt or too direct or too combative, right? So, okay, and then this card, Knight of Swords reversed, this can be a person who's unsettling or upsetting, or it can be impulsive, impetuous behavior. So my guess here is that I think specifically with like giving and being in a giving spirit, and trying to get involved in world issues and things, and if you are a platform for other people's voices, then you can start getting a lot of requests from people. And so I think that this can intimidate a lot of people from ever getting started, because they feel like they can't do enough to make a difference anyway. Or if they do, everyone will try to like come at them and ask for something, and that can be true as well. And so I think that we have to, and then there's also catfish out there, and people who are scammers and dishonest, unfortunately. And so we have to be discerning about them as well. So I think that we have to take it slow and not be too impetuous and impulsive in any direction, right? So as people like reach out in your inboxes and ask you for things, it can feel like a roller coaster of emotions, right? Because on the one hand, we know that in spirituality and mysticism, when God gives us an opportunity to share with someone, that is not something that is a moment where God's taking from us. God's actually giving us a moment for divine investment. And when we give, that like works off our negativity, that reveals more light, that helps us merit more goodness to come into our life, right? And so we as stewards of God's resources are expected to be good stewards of God's resources, right? And so if God knows that we're going to continuously keep the fluid motion of sharing, right, then we can be trusted with more and more resources. So there is like, there's a desire to want to give, and to want to share. And then the opponent comes in with an immediate, like, sort of vulnerability hangover attached to that, where you're suddenly stricken with fear and judgment and paranoia. You know, do I have enough to do this? Is this going to cost me? Maybe another expense pops up, and it's like a test, right? It's a test of fear. Thoughts start coming up. Can I trust this person? I'm wary of this, right? Because even like, so for instance, like with Palestinians, to try to support them, it makes a huge difference. And you have to kind of get through the threshold of fear about it, because there's all those things you're just like, I can't do enough to make a difference. It feels like it's almost insulting not to give more, but I don't have more. And then, so then you got to go overcome that feeling. And then you're like, I can't let this, you know, I'm so privileged. Like I should be doing more. I should be grateful to have this opportunity. And then you feel like afraid, because then more and more people start asking, and then you can't, you know, you have to say no, and you don't want to disappoint, and then you want to shut down because you're like, oh, well, I can't do enough and I'm overwhelmed, so I don't want to do anything at all. It's like, it's better to do something imperfectly than not at all, right? So it's better to say, okay, I'm going to set boundaries. My heart's going to lead me to the person that's right. You know, God's going to send me the right people to present themselves, hopefully. And I am going to try to take it slow and pray about it as they present, and try to breathe through it, right? And not get defensive, and not get fearful, and not get gripped, and not also be too quick to just give, and not pace yourself or do it sustainably, or check the situation out to make sure it's legitimate, right? So with a lot of people in like these places with civil unrest, and with so much like nothing's like really settled and everything's all up in the air, they might have other people in other countries like sponsor their GoFundMes and their different various accounts, right? Because I guess what I've gathered, and I've seen this talked about by a lot of different people anecdotally, but also there was like an NPR article about it that I was reading up on. So it's like a common practice, and I imagine it's just because people in other places have stability, and they have the ability to like have the same bank account, have the same address, have all that all the time, and it's faster and easier for them, you know, people in like places with unrest to, I guess, get access and have stable access to their funds. So, you know, those are sometimes in different people's names. And so that can get confusing, and that can send off like what feels like red flags. And then you're like, well, is this normal? And trying to like get your bearings around all of that too. So I think just giving yourself permission to go slow, and to look into it, and to look at someone's profile, and to cross-reference it if you can, and look at, you know, to talk to them a little bit in the messages a little bit, but you know, you don't want to get sucked into like, you know, the people that text you and they're like, oh, and you're like, it's the wrong number, and they're like, oh, you're so kind, do you want to be friends? And you're like, no, like, but it's not that kind of thing, you know. And so it's you can kind of verify them better, you know, if you just take your time with it and give yourself boundaries, and but try not to get defensive or negative about like if people ask for help, and angry, because that can be also a feeling that comes up too. If you're feeling stretched thin, and you're feeling stressed and pressured, and you're feeling gripped, then the shame and the guilt of it can make you feel defensive and angry, right? Have you ever been in the parking lot, right, going into the store, that person comes up to you in the parking lot, and you're very defensive in the parking lot, you feel very vulnerable, and you kind of blow them off in like a kind of a rude way, or you know, shorter than you would have been, you know, had you been more prepared, right? You would have rather have been a compassionate, gentle person, and maybe you weren't so much, right? So this is just basically like saying, like, you know, you don't have to feel impetuous to try to give to all these different places, and just to slow down and find the thing that feels right, and do a little bit of research. And even if people start asking for more and more and more, just let yourself have a boundary with it, and know that yes, it is difficult to have to say no at some point, And I think that is just one of those things where you have to come to terms with. And I think that we've been talking recently about having that holy vision of sorrow where you feel the pain of the world and you bring it in, and you have to let it in enough for it to break your heart, enough to make you want to be a catalyst for change. But beyond that, you can't stay in that sorrow and that sadness, because then it cuts you off from the blessings of the Shekhinah, the God's feminine spirit of provision and sustenance and protection, right? So we can't let ourselves get gripped with sadness and guilt and heaviness and despair and shame. We just have to decide within ourselves, like, okay, this is the amount that I am feeling led by God to give, and I'm going to be obedient here, and I'm going to listen to that voice of God, but I'm not going to be pushed into, more than I feel is right. And neither am I going to be aggressive about feeling super defensive either. That way, if the boundaries are there, then there is like a clear boundary for you, clear boundary on the outside. Everyone feels safer to feel relaxed and calm and kind. I'm learning to navigate this too, because there are a few people that I've tried to consistently give to their campaigns, and they message me a lot, and they're asking for their needs to be met, and I try to put myself in their position, and I do what I can, but I'm I'm limited to what I can do. And so it's just kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like, on the one hand, it's like it gives you some relief to know that you're doing a little something, but I think that's true giving, is because it's like you're pushing beyond what you can, and you have humility that you wish you could do more, and that you wish it was more, and it's not enough. There's so much more need in the world, right? But then you also don't get down on yourself, and don't feel shameful, and don't feel like a failure about it also. I think that is the spiritual balance of humility, but also knowing that you are enough, right? Without being entitled or arrogant or defensive, or shucking our responsibility to be vessels of sharing for the Creator. I think that we just navigate a way to do it, because it's hard it's scary when you're not used to giving out of your weekly check, or if you're not used to trying to show up and give to the Creator in a disciplined, devoted way. Because I think we know that once you start to commit to something for the Creator, you don't want to back out, right? And so it can be scary to try to start to put yourself out there like that, and to try to make that commitment, because you don't know if the net will catch you, and there's so much uncertainty. And I think there's like, it's almost like the stock market of spirituality: more risk, more reward, in a way. So that is all for tonight, you guys. I think that the more generous of spirit that we can be with people, even down to back to, like, say, the Palestinian struggle. And I mean, there's Sudan, there's Congo, there's all these people who are asking for help. And it's not like every single person that is in perilous troubles right now knows how to be an influencer, or has the ability to speak fluent English, or has the ability to speak English and be polished and have finesse, or to know marketing strategy or human psychology. They're just in desperate need. And so they may not come off having the most charm and charisma, and, they might not be asking in the way that your fantasy world would like for them to be asking. You know what I mean? So it can trigger your ego. You can feel like at first, like, what are you, like, just like pushing me around and demanding that I, like, give my paycheck to you? Like, what do you mean? And it's like, you have to slow down from those thoughts, right? Because that's what the opponent wants, right? And I think that's where we can watch how prickly we can be, and just trying to give them the generosity of spirit of just thinking, like, okay,
like, how would you feel, if you had been through all of these horrors and now on top of it, like the winter weather is just like a quagmire and a monsoon, and you're just being stormed out and rained out every day, and it's cold and everything's wet and everybody's getting sick. And, if you've ever been camping, and especially when you're away from home for a couple of days and you're not close to anywhere to just call the trip short, and it's raining the whole time, it is so miserable. You just can't find any reprieve from just the wetness everywhere, because it gets in your tent, you're wet going in the tent, it's just like the tent starts flooding, like it's terrible. And so to think that you don't have anywhere to go to escape from that is awful. So I encourage you guys, like, open your hearts to sharing with people who need it in the world right now. And I think that just pushing yourself to overcome the timidity and fear of doing it, and just facing all those fears, and knowing that, yes, there is a period of emotional, like, ups and downs, because if you haven't allowed yourself to fully take in these people, the suffering of other people in the world, that hits you. And then you want to be a helpful person, and you're giving and you're like feeling so much for them, and you're wanting so much for them, and then it's like, that you have to say no to some of the people that are asking you. And so at first you were afraid to say yes, and now it's like you don't even want to say no, and then that's the pain of having to say no. So I think it's just knowing within yourself that at some point the depth of the grief you need to process, so that you aren't depressed and dysfunctional, and you don't have like a malaise, and you don't feel like the depression of like the futility of like there's nothing you can do. It's like, don't get into that level of despair, but then come through it and process that grief, so that you can then be resilient and want to be the change that you want to see in the world, right? And so that's the ultimate, getting to the other side of it, so that you can show up and care enough to actually do something and be consistent and devoted, but not let it take you out and completely gut your spirit either, right? Because the evil in the world can certainly do that, and that's what the opponent would like. So we're not going to let that happen, though. All right, y'all, that is all for tonight. We will be back together tomorrow for our Secret Teachings of Jesus episode. Till then, peace.